Today I want to talk to you about courage. Now the word itself comes from the French word for heart. So when we access courage, we access our heart. And it is interesting when you think about this. The idea I want to share with you that I have seen change thousands of lives is a very simple one. Small, discrete, daily acts of courage can serve to develop what I like to call the cardiovascular system of your soul, helping to liberate the purpose, the passion, and the power to be your best self, to live your best life. Now, the paradox of all that is that it took death for me to access my heart. And it was death that gave birth to the 7 acts of courage that transformed my life. Before I tell you that story, I'd like to share with you those 7 acts of courage briefly. The first act of courage is the courage to dream and express the dream in spite of critics, naysayers, internet trolls, and your own self-doubt. The second act of courage is the courage to see your current reality, to see what's standing with you, what's working for you, what's also working against you. Now, the third act of courage, if I want to go from my current reality to that vision, I have to have the courage, as the Quakers say, to tell truth to power. I have to have the courage to confront. But it's not enough to do that. I need to have the fourth act of courage, which is to be confronted. If I dish it out but won't take it, there's no integrity. So the courage to be confronted is to hear other people, even if they don't deliver it in the most respectful way. The fifth act of courage is a tough one. It's the courage to step into the unknown, into ambiguity, to take emotional risks, and to give up the need to be right. The sixth act of courage is the courage to be vulnerable and open to our needs, the needs of others, to be vulnerable to life. And finally, the seventh act of courage is the courage to take action, to act in spite of fear and doubt, and it's doing the right thing, not what's most comfortable, habitual, or routine in what you do. Now, the ancient Celtic people had an insight that we exist in a landscape of sacred shapes, and that we are architects and help to shape that landscape. Well, as we shape that landscape, we also get to shape the people around us and who we get to become and how we get to dance, to live in this world of which we are a unique and special part. So, there we go, the triple spiral, triple meaning. So, I grew up in a military family of tradition, honor, and responsibility. My father was a football star, full scholarship to Notre Dame. Instead of going to school, he went to fight for his country in World War II. Now, in high school, my father's nickname was, get his picture up here, was Blood and Guts Staub. And he was a tough character, serving with the 101st Airborne, and the 82nd Airborne only made him tougher and stronger. Now, imagine going home and telling this face that you got a D. My dad wanted me to be tough and strong just like he was. Thing is, we moved quite a bit. I was in 10 different schools the first 10 years of schooling. I was always a misfit. And in England, they called me that damn Yank. In off-base schools, I was the damn army brat. I'll tell you, I got beat up a lot. What was worse, if I went home and I told this man that I'd been beaten up, he'd whip me and tell me to go back to kick tail, because that's what he would do. The thing is, I wasn't the warrior my father was and wanted me to be. I spent my childhood in a high state of anxiety about the next move, the next bully, the next time my father would be angry with me. And by the time I was 11 years old, I had developed a defensive shell of being sarcastic, argumentative, righteous, and rebellious. I was a real joy to know. And now fast forward 11 years. I was 28 years old. My defensive shell well in place, having to prove I was right all the time, argumentative. And I was working in the VA hospital as part of an internship in graduate school. As I was working at the VA, one of the patients I worked with was a man in his early 60s. When I met him, he could no longer talk. He was being fed by a tube in his stomach. He was thin as a rail, nearly bald, but he had brown, gentle eyes, and he had a warm, knowing smile. On his last afternoon on earth, I happened to be standing by his bedside because I'd been working with the family. On the other side was the duty nurse, the wife, and his daughter. His wife was holding his right hand in both of hers, and the nurse was encouraging them to speak their heart. And I stood there in amazement as they poured out their love, their gratitude, and appreciation for this man. And in the middle of it, he simply exhaled, and he was gone. The wife bent forward to kiss his lips, covering his face with her hair. Tears are running down everybody's face, including mine. After a while, the nurse led them from the room, and I was left standing there. I couldn't move, standing there by the body of this man who had served his country and just simply loved his family. And it was like a bolt of lightning went through the top of my head, down through the soles of my feet. And I realized that at some point in time, everything I would have, everything I would learn, everyone I would love, I would have to let go of at the moment of death. What was more devastating, I realized that if that had been my father on that bed, that I could not have said to him what that daughter said to her dad. In that moment, I saw very clearly that I had been treating fear as if it was some sort of God, sacrificing my life to not being judged, to not being found wanting, to not taking emotional risks. I made a commitment to stop worshiping a false God, and I made a commitment to transform my relationship with my dad. Now, this was hard because he had not had the same commitment or a realization. So I went home. Now, in our family, we yelled at each other. I decided I wasn't going to yell. I was always proving how smart I was, and he was always putting me in my place. So when I went home next time, he started yelling. I started yelling. I caught myself. I was very proud. I remembered that veteran in the VA, and I said, Dad, I want to apologize. And he said, I don't accept your damn apology. So I went for a walk around the neighborhood to calm down, which was a new behavior. I came back, ready to engage, and he said, where you go, you damn coward? I went for another long walk. I want to tell you that in the first few months of this exercise, I got a lot of physical exercise. But at the end of 9 months, I was free. I'd been able to tell him my appreciation, my love. I'd been able to engage with him, and I was free. And then something amazing happened. You can't change one part of a system without changing the whole system. 15 months later, because he was a stubborn guy, my dad told me for the first time in my memory that he loved me. He told me he was proud of me. And he started asking my advice. Now, trained as a psychologist, as a marital family therapist, I was glad to offer advice. And here's how he asked it. Son, one of my salespeople's got a problem. I wonder if that psychological bullshit might be useful. It turned out it was. His response was, well, I'll be. That BS really works. I will tell you this. For 10 years, I had the kind of dad I always wanted, because I was shaping myself to be the man I truly wished to be. From age 32 to 42, my dad and I, he was my best friend. He died suddenly at age 68. But as I stood by his graveside, just like by the bedside of that veteran in the VA hospital, there was only gratitude, grace, and appreciation. I felt blessed. So the 7 acts of courage applied to this was the courage to dream of a different way of relating to my father in spite of the past history and my own self-doubts. The courage to see the current reality, how I was contributing to the problem. The courage to confront myself, my stinking thinking, even to confront my father, but with love and respect. The courage to be confronted without defending or trying to prove I was right. The courage to learn and grow, to take emotional risks. The courage to be vulnerable to the love and the longing I sought to express. And finally, the courage to take action in the moment informed by those other 6 acts. So I urge you to take a look at these 7 acts and pick out the 1 or 2 you've least developed. Because those 1 or 2 that you've least developed is where you trip yourself up. They are the Achilles heel that will keep you limping through life. At the beginning of this talk, I said that daily acts of courage will serve to develop the cardiovascular system of your soul. So, how is the cardiovascular system of your soul doing? Because if your heart is not as grace-filled, if you're not feeling all of the love and all the joy and the deep meaning you want, then small daily acts of courage will make a significant difference. I think that is an idea worth sharing. Thank you.